So did you write when you were young?
I did. I wrote all the time. I always talk about my teachers. My third grade teacher, Miss Morris, turned me into a reader. She had a reader's corner and we got to have reading time. So I always say my third grade teacher turned me into a reader, and my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Shinohara, turned me into a writer because she had lots of writing assignments and she would tell me all the time how good I was at it. She might have told everybody that, but that's when I decided I wanted to be a writer. And I kept writing stories all through school, but I never showed anybody. Like in high school, I'd get to class early and I'd write short stories. But I never showed anybody until college. I took a writing class, creative writing class, and that's when I started showing my work. And then my professor told me, oh, you should try and submit these to journals. But I was going to school to become a veterinarian. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. But of course, everything changed, and then I became a writer. And then I started showing my work, obviously. But it took me a long time before I shared my work. So I think it's wonderful when you can share your work.
And why was it hard to share? Were you shy about it, or?
I think I'm shy about it. I wrote a lot of love stories with Japanese American characters because I never got to read that. So I wrote that, and I guess I didn't want to share. Probably not my teacher. Yeah. So I think, it's just writing stories for me back then. And when I got more serious about writing, then, I studied the craft and I decided I wanted to write for young people because that's what turned me into a reader. And I think it's such an honor to write for young people.
Yeah.
And they're a lot more discerning than I think than adults. So they will tell you if they don't like something.
Oh, they will.
Is it hard to do the dialogue, like to use the words so that it sounds like it's actually kids talking? And
not for Jasmine. For some reason, I can channel an 8-year-old pretty well. When I write middle grade, it's funny because I will think I'm using, I forgot what it was. I said something, oh, he's so fine. I was having a middle grade girl talk about a cute boy. And the copy editors, the editors who work at the publishing houses, they're much younger than I am. And they're like, nobody says that. So I have a harder time with middle grade. Colloquialisms, like how do you say something's cool, but now I have friends with kids in middle school and I will ask them.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. And where do you get your ideas?
Oh, my ideas come from everywhere. Like for Jasmine Toguchi, the very first book, Mochi Queen, came to me because I was reading a newspaper article about a Japanese American family that got together every year to make mochi, to pound mochi, the traditional way. And I knew that traditionally there was a man's job and a woman's job. The man's job was to use a big hammer and pound the rice and to make the mochi, and the woman's job was to steam the rice and to roll the rice into the mochi into shapes. And I thought, what would happen if there was a girl in a family who wanted to do the boy's job? And so that's how that idea, and then, then it took off and I got to write 8 books with Jasmine. But other books come from like Sweet and Sour is about a childhood friendship and being betrayed or misunderstanding of betrayal. And in fact, right now, my husband's in San Francisco having lunch with my childhood best friend. And we did have a misunderstanding when we were in college. And I thought, what would happen if it was a boy and a girl and they had a misunderstanding? So that's that idea. So it comes from like history. It comes from reading articles. Sometimes it comes from television. I'll like watch a show and I'll think, what if, this happened? From everywhere. I always say, just keep your eyes open, your ears open. Like probably with poetry too, right? You just get ideas and you can't really say how.
And what's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job, well, one, making up stuff and writing it down and getting paid for it, and doing school visits and actually meeting readers. It wasn't something I thought of when I thought I wanted to become a writer. I think I was still old fashioned. I was like, I'll be and not really thinking that you get to meet readers, but that has been a joy and a surprise, going into schools and going to book festivals, doing bookstore events, and getting to actually meet the people who read your books. So,
what are some of the questions that they ask the most?
Like when I go to schools?
Yeah.
questions like you asked,
Yeah.
like where do you get your ideas? How'd you, are you like
Yeah, I was
Jasmine?
gonna ask
Which
that, yeah.
I'm not. When I was in third grade, I was really shy. I never spoke up. Jasmine is based on my daughter,
Oh,
who
that's
was
so fun.
much more confident and spoke up, and yeah, she spoke her mind all the time. So, but little pieces of me are in all the books and all
Yeah.
the characters. Yeah. So usually questions like that. The strangest question I got asked was, "How old is your husband?" Like, what?
That's really funny.
Yeah.
And what's the hardest part of your job?
I will say writing first draft.
Mhm.
Even, I always start with a premise, like I'll have an idea and then I'll sit down and write it. And first drafts for me are really hard. Facing the blank page, looking at blank page and knowing that I want to fill it up, feels like a lot of pressure. And oftentimes I have to trick myself. Just write 200 words. You can do 200 words. And then I'll
Oh, that's good.
yeah, first